Hello, English 242 students. It's Dr. Mills here for Module 6. Going to give you the Module 6 lecture now in preparation for the quiz. This lecture is called Tennyson and Browning, Duty, Desire, and the Power of the Spoken Voice. So I'm going to set the scene first and talk about why these poets matter. By the mid-19th century, Britain was wrestling with what it meant to live in a rapidly changing world. The Industrial Revolution was still transforming cities, science was challenging old beliefs, and questions about morality, gender roles, and duty were everywhere. Literature wasn't just entertainment, it was how Victorians thought through big questions about life. Two of the strongest voices from this period are Alfred Lord Tennyson and Robert Browning. Both of them wrote poems that give us not just beautiful language, but also insight into the struggles of their age. Duty versus desire, public expectation versus private longing, and the way people reveal and sometimes betray themselves through their own words. Alfred Lord Tennyson, who lived from 1809 to 1892, came from a family filled with both talent and trouble. His father was educated but unstable, and Tennyson carried those early scars into his adult life. At Cambridge, he became close friends with Arthur Hallam, whose sudden death at 22 left Tennyson devastated. Much of his poetry was shaped by grief and by a constant search for meaning in a world full of change. For years, Tennyson struggled financially and wasn't widely recognized, but in 1850, everything changed. His long elegy in memoriam AHH made him famous, and that same year he became Britain's poet laureate. He held the role for over 40 years, essentially becoming the official poet of Victorian England. His poetry combines rich musical language and emotional honesty and explores big ideas about faith, loss, courage, and purpose. Tennyson's poem Ulysses. In Ulysses, Tennyson reimagines the legendary Greek hero long after the adventures of Homer's Odyssey. Ulysses is now an old king who's stuck at home ruling a people he calls a savage race that hoard and sleep and feed. He feels restless and unfulfilled, longing to return to the sea and keep pursuing adventure and knowledge, like a sinking star beyond the utmost bound of human thought. So, what's happening in this poem? Ulysses speaks directly, reflecting on his weariness with ordinary rule and his desire for one last voyage. He compares himself to his son, who is better suited to govern. The final lines are a rousing call to his old shipmates. Though they are aged, they can still strive, seek, and not yield. So, why it matters? The poem is about more than a Greek hero. It reflects Victorian tension between duty, like staying home and fulfilling responsibilities, and desire, like seeking personal meaning and chasing greatness. Is Ulysses being noble or is he being selfish? In his longing inspiring, or is his longing inspiring, or is it irresponsible? Tennyson leaves it open for us, which is why the poem has remained so powerful after all these years. The next poem from Tennyson is The Lady of Shalott. This is one of Tennyson's most haunting and beautiful poems. It tells the story of a mysterious lady who's cursed to live alone in a tower near Camelot. She can't look at the world directly. She can only see it through a mirror, weaving what she sees into a magical web. What happens in the poem? The lady lives in isolation, weaving the shadows of life as seen in her mirror. When she sees Sir Lancelot, she's so captivated that she looks directly out the window. The mirror cracks, the curse falls upon her, and she floats down the river to her death. So, why does this poem matter? It works on many levels. On the surface, it's a tragic fairy tale ballad, but it also raises questions about art, gender, and freedom. The lady is like an artist. She sees the world indirectly, not through living in it. She also represents the restricted role of women in Victorian society. She's confined, she's isolated, she's punished for reaching beyond the prescribed boundaries of her gender. Her fate asks us, is longing worth the price of freedom? The beauty of the poem lies in its imagery, its rhythm, and the mix of enchantment and tragedy. Now on to Robert Browning. By the way, the password for this week's quiz is Browning, Browning, all lowercase. Browning he lived from 1812 to 1889. He grew up in London with a father who loved books and a home full of ideas. He was mostly self educated and developed a unique poetic voice early on in life. Though his early works confused readers, he eventually became one of the most influential poets of the century. His marriage to fellow poet Elizabeth Barrett was legendary. They eloped to Italy, where they lived and wrote together. While Elizabeth was more famous during her lifetime, Browning's reputation grew steadily. What makes Browning distinctive is his mastery of the dramatic monologue, poems spoken by a character who reveals far more than they intend to. Through these voices, Browning explored psychology, power, love, jealousy, and cruelty. The poem we're covering by Browning in this unit is My Last Duchess. The poem is a textbook example of the dramatic monologue. The speaker is a duke who shows a guest a painting of his late wife. She's dead. At first, he seems polite and cultured, praising the portrait and the Duchess's beauty. But as he talks, a darker story emerges. What happens in the poem? The Duke complains that his wife was too easily pleased. She smiled at everyone, not just him. He hints that her friendliness made him jealous and resentful. Then, in a chilling casual line, he reveals, I gave commands. Then all smiles stopped together. In other words, he had her killed. The poem ends with him moving on, showing off another piece of artwork as if nothing has happened. Why this poem matters. The brilliance of the poem lies in how much the Duke reveals without meaning to. He never admits any guilt, but his arrogance, his control, and his cruelty become obvious. Browning uses this voice to critique the aristocracy, male power, and the dangers of obsession with control and appearances. So, wrapping up this module, we talk about duty, desire, and the spoken voice. Together, these poets show the variety of Victorian concerns. Tennyson wrestles with questions of longing, purpose, and the costs of freedom. His poetry is musical, emotional, and full of ambiguity. Browning explores how people reveal themselves through speech, often exposing pride, cruelty, or insecurity beneath a polished surface. Both of these poets remind us that literature doesn't just tell stories, it gives us windows into human struggles that are timeless. Duty versus desire, isolation versus freedom, and love versus control. So that's the Module 6 lecture. Thank you for your attention today, and good luck on the quiz. If you have any questions, reach out to me. Have a great week.